Today, I'm going to show you my favorite 20 images that I captured in 2022. It was an amazing year photographically. Plus, I'll share why I'm so excited to get back to Cuba this April. Well, hey everyone, it's Hudson. Welcome to this week's video. So recently we had a set of office hours, the big free group photography meetings where we all get together and talk about things photographic or look at images. And we looked at everyone's best images from 2022. And I threw one in my own, and it was no easy thing to go through the images from the last year because it's been an amazing year photographically, and come up with just one. And so when I kind of got it culled down to 20, I set that aside as a collection, and I thought I'd run through, share each of those images, why it's important to me, maybe some behind the scenes little tidbits about creating it with you in this video. So I'm going to jump in and do that. And at the end, I'm going to talk a little about Cuba. If anybody's ever been interested at all in Cuba, we're finally going back there this April. I can't wait. It was a workshop that was planned for 2020. I was so excited about it, and it had to be canceled twice in a row because of the pandemic. So I can't wait to get back. And I'll share with you why after we run through some of my favorite images from 2020. So let's jump in. All right. So, to start, I'm going to go basically in sequential order. And a lot of these are from workshops. Almost all of them are from workshops. And the first one just, was this morning in Death Valley. I'll open up the sidebar so you can see settings, where I took our whole workshop out into the dunes. There was a big windstorm. It was just raging wind. We went out pre-dawn to get in position. And it was a challenge. I mean, the wind was blowing. We had one lens on, no chance of changing lenses. It was this just unrelenting sandstorm. And I thought to myself, man, I hope there's a crack in these clouds at dawn. I mean, the odds looked good, but it's one of those situations where we went out, we all suffered, and it was worth it when we got there. And I used my 24 to 120 Nikon Z lens, stopped all the way down to f/22 to capture this star as the sun came through that little crack. And we just had that moment of light. Here's turning to the left, and you got these folks out hunkered down with their tripods. You can see the sand is just in motion. There's no footprints. Our own footprints were gone. Every time you'd stop, you can see the sand blowing off the dunes. It was an amazing experience. It was unique. I've shot in those dunes so much, and I've never had conditions like that. So it's one of those where, you dreamed what it might be like, and it exceeded your expectations. I just loved this morning out in those dunes. This is on the same trip. This is a spot that I've so long been taking groups to and going to myself, where I really want the light on the Amargosa Mountains back there with light on the dunes of Mesquite Dunes in the foreground. And I've never gotten both at the same time. I'm still dreaming of the evening or the morning where I've got big puffy clouds above the mountains and that kind of diffuse light coming in. This was tough light. This is a big panorama. I captured it at 280 millimeters with my 100 to 400 at f8. It's a whole bunch of images sewn together. This is one where I've been trying to get the light right for years. It's not perfect, but it's the best I've gotten yet. And I used panoramic capture just to get even more resolution out of it. I certainly could have shot it in a single frame, but I love, I flipped the camera vertical and panned through the scene. This one came right down to the wire as one of my absolute favorite images of last year. It was in the top couple of images, and it was just this happy bit of luck where I was photographing Palouse Falls with my workshop, and it was flat light, but we were playing with long exposures and blurring the water, and it was a nice overcast light. And then I saw that there were birds flying around, and I slapped my 100 to 400 on, and I started following them. And then there was just this moment where this whole little flock of birds was in front of the falls, and I had my shutter speed pretty fast, where I was at 1250th of a second, that kind of stopping birds in flight. And the falls is so big and so powerful that just this moment happened, and I knew I was in burst mode, but I saw something in my brain, saw that moment happen in front of me. It was just this great bunch of circumstances all came together, and I love how this turned out. I've printed it big and I love it. On that same trip, we had this one spectacular evening where there wasn't that much wind, gorgeous light, and just this blend of colors and shapes. This is one of my favorite photos from that spectacular spot, Steptoe Butte in the Palouse that's so famous to photograph from. Again, this is it. This is with my 100 to 400 and the 1.4 teleconverter on it, 560 millimeters. Stopping at ISO 64 to get great quality at 1/8 of a second on the tripod. It's just this fun place to do extractive landscapes with long lenses. The trip to Costa Rica yielded a lot of wonderful, wonderful photographic opportunities, and having that new 800 millimeter prime from Nikon that's so light you can handhold it. This was the evening that I first met up with David Archer before our workshop attendees arrived. We were literally walked from where we were staying at the resort to this little area where there's a bunch of wildlife and birds nesting and crocodiles, and this crocodile swam toward us, and the light was so beautiful. It was really low light. I had this lens wide open at f6.3. I was stopped down for photographing birds when this crocodile started swimming toward me. I was still at a 1600th of a second, and you can see my ISO was at 10,000, and that's another revolution that's come recently for me, is the ability to use software like DxO Pure Raw to reduce the noise and get this kind of image quality out of 10,000 ISO 50 megapixel image or 46 megapixel images is just something we couldn't have dreamed of a few years ago. And this one stood out as one of my favorite images as well. And that whole trip, I just fell in love with using that 800 millimeter lens. I think all of these photos from Costa Rica, except one, were with the 800. And you can see, 2000 ISO, 200th of a second, hand holding. There's rain drips being blurred, and still it's razor sharp with this lens. This lens is special, wide open. Just another, I don't know that I could capture this way without the technology that we have now. Hand holding an 800 at 125th of a second. And it is so sharp, so fun to shoot with, and in these darkened forest conditions. This one just was this moment. The rain had been pouring down, and we were out in this place where sloths are, with a guide, and all of a sudden the rain downpour stopped. We'd just been eating and drinking tea and having fun, and all of a sudden, the rain stopped. We went out back into the woods, and the sloths started to come out. I really love this one. Just says everything about a sloth to me. Using the 105 millimeter macro and working with macros, we did a lot of stuff where we were lighting these different little macro subjects at this wonderful organic farm where they've sort of converted what used to be a palm oil plantation into a refuge where they're trying to restore native habitat and native species, and educating younger Costa Ricans about that. And this is this little spot where there were just some poison arrow frogs and interesting little macro subjects naturally lit, and I loved the way this particular image came out. This is one of my favorite desktops now on my Mac. And then traveling to Glacier, scouting for our workshop that we're doing in 2023. Glacier National Park is this place I remember from my childhood as just being bigger and more special than other places that I've been, and it proved to be my memories were accurate from my childhood there, and photographing there with Rick was just amazing. This was fun for me because I was using my little brand new Leica Q2 28 millimeter fixed, small but high quality camera, and I've been playing around with black and white. You're going to see more black and white in these images than I've ever really shot before this year. And combining that with long exposure and using a small camera to do that. This is 16 stops of neutral density, shooting for 120 seconds at ISO 50 with that camera. Just so much fun. I've been really enjoying shooting people and midday light in black and white and looking at it through the OLED viewfinder of that little camera, looking at the world in black and white, and then I'll shoot it in a black and white JPEG plus color raw, and I can process it either way that I want. But I've been processing in RAW a lot lately. This evening I'm photographing Mount Hood was just gorgeous with the full moonrise. It was wonderful getting a group of people in the Portland workshop up to this wonderful location and camping out and getting our tripod set up, and then suddenly you see the moon start to rise through the clouds. Looks like my mouse is getting a little low on juice, but that'll be fine. Just a great evening with a wonderful group of people. And then, when you've envisioned what's going to happen and you get that beautiful mauve, afterglow in the east as the sun's setting in the west and the moon rises into it. Special. This is actually the image that I chose as my favorite image of the year. This is one of my favorite people, Gary Sharlock. He's a frequent workshop co-conspirator. This was during the Portland workshop. We stopped to get coffee along the waterfront in Portland at one of our favorite little coffee shops, Rick and mine, the Water Avenue Coffee. And I was messing around with the Leica, and it's black and white mode. This is just a JPEG, pretty much straight out of camera. And I love shooting with this camera wide open at f1.7 and how sharp it renders details. People ask me, well, you're a Nikon guy, why are you shooting with this little Leica? And it's the size of that camera combined with the quality of its little 28mm lens. It's just so sharp where you want it to be, and the way that the focus falls off is so beautiful, and there's no bad setting with this camera and lens, and it's just kind of it's a harkening back to the old days of shooting with a manual film camera feel to using it that I really have just been enjoying, and it's kind of reinvigorated some of my passion for photography and exploring some different things. And this image is special because it talks about that, plus it's me exploring some sort of new ways of shooting, and I feel like this captures Gary, and he's just a special guy. And likewise, this is my little cousin Stella, was here from Australia with Kelly, my cousin Rio's fiance. This is not Stella's mom. Stella's mom is Pilar from Melbourne, Australia. But Stella came to visit us, and Kelly is about to become her aunt. And we just had a wonderful time with a bunch of family together. And this image just, I don't know, as I go through images, I love this picture of Stella. That's that baby. She's a doll. We're going to go to Australia and visit her at the end of this year, and I can't wait. This was an evening up high in the Inyo Mountains up above Bishop. Right before we started our Owens Valley workshop. This was an evening out scouting and just checking all the locations we wanted to bring everyone. And we had this core crew, great guys, and Rick and I. And I remember I could see something was happening. We were driving down toward town, and you could just see the sky was going crazy. And I said, stop. And we literally kind of climbed over this ridge, and this was what we found. It wasn't immediately that tree, but I went running along looking for a foreground subject, and it all came together. It was just spectacular to sort of be up above the sunset. We're up at 12,000 feet or 11,000 feet here, looking down on the Owens Valley to the west, and the sun felt like it was setting below us. The way the atmospherics were, it was just an amazing evening. Used this as the about image for Photo Raw 2023, and I'm proud to have that. This image just speaks to what the fun we have at night on workshops, particularly in the late summer and early fall when it's so fun to photograph the Milky Way. You photograph sunset, and then we get all geared up and set up to photograph the Milky Way. And this was just a great evening in the Owens Valley where we all have our move, shoot, move lasers pointed more or less up here at Polaris. And I literally have, my camera was one of these, I think it was probably this one, and I ran over with the Leica and put it on a quick tripod and shot this at 4 seconds, wide open, had everybody hold still. Somebody didn't quite get the message, but the crew, it's just, I don't know, it just feels like a Pink Floyd album, and it was such a fun night. That workshop, this image is just proves to me it's so important to get there early. This was going up to Convict Lake up near Mammoth Lakes in the Owens Valley, and it's just such a beautiful, beautiful place. We got up there really early, and then, before the sun rose, there were these clouds. It had been perfectly clear, and then these clouds came in, and they started to change color a bit, and that glow before there's any direct light. I think the best moment of the morning was that period as it started to glow, and you find your foreground subject and you get everything dialed in. This is a focus stack. Fired one frame with focused right on the foreground of this rock at f10, and then another frame focused on the mountains in the background and blended those. And then later in the day, we worked to position that log. It was turned the wrong way. I wanted it to lead into the scene, and then the light came up, and I think I actually prefer the pre-dawn light. It just shows, being there really early, staying there really late. The blue hour is kind of where it's at, but that was an amazing morning. Cold, amazing morning. This shot in the Tetons, we saw the herd of bison. We stopped the van, we all got out, we had long lenses. There's a rickety little fence. We were probably too close to this herd given the rickety size of this little fence, but there was a number of people, not maybe 100, but maybe 60, 70 people were already out photographing, and they started moving by us, and my goal was to try to put the Tetons and the bison together, the beasts in their native habitat. And this shot really worked out for me. I underexposed it a little bit and then used some of the new masking capabilities in Lightroom to select subject, and it selected this whole group just automatically, and I just pulled the shadow detail up on them without blowing the mountains and the sky out. And I just revel in the amount of dynamic range that we have, and the fact that we can, in a single frame, capture such highlights and shadows at the same time, backlit here. This one really works for me, of the family, the herd sort of moving along, mothers, babies, big papas. I don't know. This one I just love. And then finally, here's just an awesome workshop crew. This is half of our group that were photographing one of the barns, and we were in the Tetons, the Mormon Row, the Molten Barns. We were out this beautiful morning where it was crystal clear pre-dawn blue hour, and then these clouds started to form right as the sun came up and changed color. And then the whole sky to the north, the storm blew in, and we had beautiful light still from the sun creeping under it. And I was just walking between barns and encountered, half of our workshop crew, or a third of our workshop crew here, and Rick was leading some of them, and we've got David and Ray and Bob and Chap and Jim there, and I don't know, it's like the album cover for how much fun we have in these workshops, and when the light is just great. I had the little Leica Q2 in my hand, and bam. But there's one quick thing to talk about this photo, something that I learned photographing wildlife with a long lens and low light. And one complaint I have with the little Leica Q2 is that while you're slinging it on your side, it's too easy to bump the shutter speed dial and switch it from automatic to 1/2000th of a second, which are right next to each other. And you can see that happened in this image. And unbeknownst, I set f11 to try to get foreground to the clouds all in focus with that 28mm, but I didn't look to see it was shooting at 6400th of ISO as I was getting all these guys looking at me in that beautiful light. So the beauty of knowing that I can pull a 6400 ISO image from this camera through DxO Pure Raw and come out with an image that's virtually noise-free in the shadows. That's just stuff we didn't have not long ago. And it's the kind of thing that this last year of photography has just been so incredible for gear and for technology and software, the masking capabilities that have come to us, and Lightroom and Photo Raw, but most of all, the people. And my favorite thing I've ever done professionally in my entire life is running these workshops in beautiful places with amazing groups of photographers, and creatively collaborating and learning from one another, and having these adventures that the memories of which will just last a lifetime. It's literally the most fun thing I've ever done professionally. So I'm looking forward to this year's workshops. We have a whole bunch of great ones, from Glacier National Park to Cuba, which, we'll jump in and I'll show you some images that show why I'm so excited to get back to Cuba this year. So I've got a little collection of images. Cuba is just special, and every time I bring up Cuba, I hear from people, well, by running a workshop there, you're supporting the Cuban government or the repressive regime. And I just take the politics out of it. Cuba is special. The people there are amazing. The architecture, the scenes, the sights, the taste, the sounds, the music, all of it is just sort of nothing shy of incredible and doesn't feel inauthentic or touristy. And we go on a helping the Cuban people visa. Everything's taken care of from the time that the participants arrive at the airport till when they leave from the Havana airport. And we're on a supporting the Cuban people visa, which means we stay in local residences, interact with local people, and we meet with business owners and artists every single day to learn about their lives and what's a struggle for them and what's good for them. And my wife and family and I were able to do some good and help some of the people that we met out the last time we were there. And I would hope that some of my workshop participants choose to do the same in the wake of this. And I just personally feel that no matter what your politics are, that isolating a group of people or two groups of people from one another is not the path towards progress. I think that more interaction and more getting to know one another can only lead to good things in the future. And I certainly hope for things to progress and for Cuban people's lives to be a bit more free with more economic room for advancement in the future. And I feel even more so having visited and spent time, and I think everybody who comes along on this workshop this April is going to feel the same way. Let me just show you why I'm so excited to get back there. So the architecture, I went there in 2019 based on just rave reviews from friends and family and other photographers who had spent time there saying, you've got to go, There's a lot of people coming from Canada and from Europe, and things are changing. It's becoming a bit more touristy. I think COVID has set it back a bit, and they're even more in need of tourist dollars coming in, but it doesn't feel touristy still. And we felt totally safe there with our kids on the streets of Havana. Pike was 3, Pepper was 2. I had my aunt, my wife, and I. And we went and sort of previewed the sights and sounds and what we would do in a workshop here, and had the time of our lives. This is the view from the private residence where we stayed in Old Town Havana. Just the skyline there is pretty surreal. The streets, the cobbles, the walk in the streets doing street photography. Here you can see Pepper is just passed out. The details there. This is in the Opera House in Havana. The city streets at night are otherworldly. I can't wait to walk this with the Leica Q2. My friend Javier, who I still communicate with off and on, an amazing local guide. He's originally from Trinidad and knew everything you could hope to know about where we were visiting, and went so out of his way to help my family have an amazing time there. Stacy and the kiddos, the backdrops in Havana are just stunning, and this was in a little local artist colony that we visited, where the walls are just made out of all of these individually handmade tiles. There were celebrations and people dressed up, and street celebrations and dancing in the squares and the weekends. It's a street shooting nirvana, and the food and drink. This is a cocktail in a rooftop bar called the Jimi Hendrix on the right, and a lemonade for my kiddos with a slice of pineapple rolled up in the mouth of it. I am definitely looking forward to getting back and eating and drinking in Cuba again. And the old cars, we all know it's almost cliched, but it's so wonderful to see them prowling these cobbled streets. This is one of my favorite images from the trip. It's with my 105 1.4 old f lens on my Z6, and I'm really looking forward. I'll take that lens back with me, but I'm hoping maybe I get the 85 1.2 for this trip. We'll see if it's out in time. But the old cars are amazing, and it's awesome to take rides in them around the old town. There are people who make a business out of that. And we get to talk with them and see what that lifestyle is like, and also just ride around in these cherry old cars from the 50s through old streets. Then go into Viñales, which is an agricultural community in this gorgeous limestone cliffed valley. There are caves, and there are more horses and carts in this town than there are cars and trucks. And the hiking is wonderful around there. There's opportunities for early morning hikes with gorgeous views of these limestone mountains. And I've actually found a place while we were there for us to stay as a workshop where we'll be in just the right spot to take some beautiful sunrise and sunset photos with these mountains as the backdrop. There's an organic farm we visit there where all the food that we have a meal there where the food is all grown on the farm. It was just incredible and fun, and the people there were just super sweet. A wonderful family runs this organic farm. Viñales was just fabulous, and we'll also do some stuff in Havana where we have music and we go salsa dancing or photographing salsa dancing, depending on whether you want to participate or not. And don't forget the beaches. There's a reason why the rich and famous made the beaches around Havana their playground back in the 50s and before. It's just a stunning, stunning place that feels as if the sands of time have sort of stopped shifting there, and it's a wonderful opportunity to go to a beautiful place, meet amazing people, eat great food, photograph street scenes and wild lands, agricultural scenes, and just have a cultural experience unlike you can get just about anywhere else. So I'm excited to go. There's going to be 2 workshops in April. We basically sold them out before we ever marketed them, both from people who had been in the workshops that were canceled back in 2020 and from workshop regulars who'd heard me raving about how amazing Cuba is. But there is an opportunity to join us. We had a couple drop out due to kind of a last-minute family conflict, and there's 2 spots in the second workshop. I think that is April 20th through 26th. It's going to be Rick LePage and I, local guides. Again, like I said, everything's covered. You get to the airport in Havana. We have the visas all dialed in for the support of the Cuban people. Visa, itineraries, everything you need for customs. You fly into the airport, you're picked up, and everything, food, local transport is covered. You can check out more about it at the link up here. It's also going to be in this video's full description. And there's a downloadable PDF with more details right on that website that you can find out all the details. If you want to know more, hit me up either via email or in the comments on this video. I'd love to talk about it. It's going to be an awesome, awesome trip. The other people that have signed up are amazing. They're all people that I know. So I hope you'll consider joining. It's going to be an amazing time. And I'm looking forward to a lot of things that are happening in 2023 from Glacier National Park, as I said, which is a new workshop location we scouted last year. It's a place I spent a lot of time in my childhood, and I'm outrageously excited to take a group of people and showcase just how spectacular that location is. To the Oregon Coast Workshop and Newport, a place where I spent a lot of time growing up because it's not far from my hometown of Turner, Oregon, and it's got amazing things. The Oregon Coast is epic everywhere along it, but this is the first time we're running a mid-coast workshop in kind of my old home stomping grounds as a kid, and I'm excited about that. We'll be scouting for workshops. I'm actually, while you're watching this, I'm in Mexico and I'm scouting for a location for the total eclipse next April in 2024. So mark that down on your calendar if you'd like to join us to photograph the total eclipse. Total eclipses are mind-bending events you'll never forget. And I'm also scouting this year in Scotland in the Isle of Skye for a workshop coming up. So lots and lots of fun stuff. I hope your 2023 has been great so far, promises to be even greater than 2022. You had a great set of holidays, that you're staying safe, that you're staying creative. And we'll see you next week.